Christmas from all of us here at Kankakee Podcast. We have never done a Christmas-themed episode before, and we thought this year we put out a new episode every single Monday. Christmas this year is on a Monday. We're like, do we do an episode? Do we skip this? And we thought, you know what? Let's just go ahead and put out an episode. What do you do for a Christmas episode? You invite Santa Claus. So that's what we did. Welcome, Santa Claus.
Well, hello there. Hello, everybody. How are you? Merry Christmas.
So, Santa, we have the best Santa Claus here. I would like to say that he is probably the most authentic Santa Claus that you will ever meet here in Kankakee County. And his name, besides Santa Claus, is Steve Sullivan.
Yes.
So welcome, Steve.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. Seriously, I don't think I've ever met a more authentic Santa Claus than you. Seriously.
I appreciate it.
Not even in just this area, but just in general. So,
nice.
Yeah, I remember we met, I don't know if the first time we met was last year during Project Headspace and Timing's Christmas party. I briefly met you there.
Okay.
And was very impressed.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I try.
So how long have you been Santa Claus?
So this year will be my 39th year of portraying Santa Claus.
Oh, my gosh. And so you've been doing this since you were a young man.
18 years old.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
18.
Yes.
How do you portray Santa Claus as an 18-year-old?
Well, back then I wore the fake beard and the fake wig.
Yeah. Okay.
And that because my beard was really dark. That's the good old days there.
So at that point you weren't like dyeing your beard?
No, I was. I bought very good beards that looked very real.
Yeah.
And the very first one I had, it wouldn't stay up on my mustache.
Uh-huh.
So I had to take and use eyelash glue and glue it to my mustache so it would stay up.
Okay.
Which added, because then if the children kind of wanted to give it a little tug, it didn't give like a artificial beard. And
like you see in all the movies.
Yeah.
And so for those that aren't watching the visual of this episode, we have the studio decked out in Christmas, and you're in full-blown Santa Claus.
Oh, yes.
You can probably hear the bells jingling. So, yeah. I mean, we're not, we're going all out on this.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, you had the glue on and the wig. I mean, I'm sure that probably kids weren't yanking on that.
No, they didn't pull on that. But like I said, the beard I had a couple of them that would give it a little, I could feel them tug on it and I'd be, that hurts, and that, and it didn't give. And they're like, okay, it is real. I'm like, yeah.
But how did that position come into play for you?
So,
I mean,
I was sitting around the table with my mom and dad. And this was in 1984. And the Sears or the JCPenney catalog came in the mail. It used to do that back then.
Yes, I remember looking at that.
We were sitting there. My mom was thumbing through it, and we were all talking and that. And she came across, there was a Santa suit in there. And she says, Steve, you need to do that. And I'm like, do what? She says, play Santa Claus. And I'm like, oh, Ma, come on. She says, no, you'd be good at it.
Were you a jolly fellow?
I like to have fun. I was. No, I absolutely loved Christmas. I mean, from when I was a little guy that I went and sat on Santa's lap. I mean, I was just, whenever I seen Santa Claus, I was in awe. It's like, oh my gosh, the guy's here, you know? But anyways, she kept talking and my dad said, you'd make a good one. I'm like, she says, my dad looked at her and he says, buy that suit. He says, he's going to do it. I'm like, okay, I guess the decision's been made. And so I started off, my mom got it. First year I went to, some cousins, aunts and uncles, we little family get-togethers. Then my mom worked out at promotional center back then, and they had a Christmas party and they wanted a Santa. And my mom brought my name up, and so she says, "You want to go do it?" And I'm like, "Ooh, that's going to be a lot of kids." And I said, "But yeah, I'll do it. I mean, if I'm in it, I'm in it." So I went, and from there on, it's just been word of mouth where people have, asked me to come to their houses and all that. It's just been in the last, I'm going to say maybe 10, 15 years that I've really gotten public appearances out now and that. And it's wonderful. It's the greatest thing in the world.
And I would say, and I don't mean this in a bad way, I'm sure that has a lot to do with your age now.
Yeah.
Like you aged really well into the role.
Yeah.
But just think about all those years playing Santa Claus, and then that just, because you got to have more than the look.
Oh, yeah.
You have to have the feeling and that vibration about you. And so you had been practicing that for so many years. And then finally, when you naturally had the looks that Santa Claus does, it just kind of like, it's almost like just a shimmer probably came over you. And there is Santa.
Every time you put the suit on, seriously, I mean, I know people have read books and heard it and that, but it is. You put the Santa suit on and you're Santa. I mean, you just are. You at least I do, I'll put it that way. I get the jolly feeling like, hey, I'm here to be happy. I'm here to have fun. I'm here to make the children happy. I'm here to make the adults happy. I mean, everybody just, whenever they see Santa Claus, their whole attitude changes in that.
I mean, just getting ready for this episode, I was so excited. Like it's Christmas. Seriously, I'm not kidding. As I was putting together the studio this morning and picking out my clothes and I was like, "Ooh, Santa! Santa's coming! Oh my God, it's Santa!"
It's like I said, the feeling when you put this suit on is unbelievable. It is, and all it takes is that one child to see their eyes just light up and smile at you, and it's like, oh yeah, this is it.
What do you remember from those very first events being Santa Claus? Do you have vivid memories that stick out from the kids or just from?
Yes. I have a ton of great memories in that. One of them was I went to a house party and there were several little ones there. And of course, they all sit on Santa's lap. Santa ask them what they want for Christmas, blah, blah, blah. Well, one little boy, he asked me for a toy tow truck. And I'm like, okay, Santa will see what he can do for you. Never make a promise. Santa will see what he can do for you. The next year, I went back to the same house party. Same little ones were there, a year older. And lo and behold, he did not get his toy tow truck the year before.
Uh-oh, Santa's in trouble.
Yeah, Santa's on the spot big time.
Instead of him being on the naughty list, Santa's on the naughty list.
And he sat on my lap and I said, "What would you like for Christmas?" And he says, "I would like my toy tow truck that you didn't bring me last year," just like that. And I'm like, oh.
That's just a shot to the heart.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, well, the elves were busy. There's some toys that they didn't get made and that. So in the meantime, I mean, he kind of smoothed it over, but he says, "I really want that toy tow truck, Santa." I said, okay. So Santa will see what he can do. So he got down and I watched him, and luckily he ran up to his mom. I'm like, okay, so I see Mom. So on my exit out here, I'm going to swing by Mom and say, I don't care Mom. If you don't get him anything else, get him that toy tow truck, because next year, I'm out of options here.
Next year, I'm not coming back. I'm not taking this anymore. It's almost like you have to work with the parents and be like, look, there's like a before meeting and then like an after meeting with the parents and be like, okay, look, this is what this child said. This is what this child said. Just so you know.
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. I mean, it's and I mean, there again, I do not promise anything because you don't know what the child's going to get for Christmas. You don't know. One other funny thing I remember is I went to a house party and went in, and as I'm leaving, well, the little ones always want to see Santa's reindeer. Even though I tell them that I came in on a helicopter, special friends bring me to your house, blah, 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 they still think the reindeer are out there. So I walked out the door, and I'm just walking down a lane to where my car is, and my wife's waiting, and I hear crunch, 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 crunch in the snow behind me, and I'm like, is that? And I turn around, and here's this little girl following me out in the snow, and I'm like, oh, darling, what are you doing here? She says, well, I'm coming to see your reindeer. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's like, oh. I says, no. I says, Santa's reindeer aren't here. They're resting for the big trip on Christmas Eve. I said, so the reindeer aren't here. You're not going to get to see them. I said, come on, we need to get back in because she didn't have a coat on. Nothing.
Oh, gosh.
She snuck out the door. So I go back and on the door, and they come and open the door, and I'm like, somebody wanted to see the reindeer, and everybody's like, oh, I said, it's all right. I said, the reindeer aren't here, but I said, she's going to be cold. I said, hang on to her because I have to leave.
I gotta go. Yeah. No reindeer.
No.
Yeah. The resting.
And, it's, those are two of my favorite stories in that because, I remember those. And that was probably 2-3 years after I started that, those two events happened. I've had, all sorts of requests.
What's the strangest request that Santa Claus has gotten?
Oh, man, you're really going to make me think now. I'm trying to think. I'm going to say probably the strangest thing was a little girl wanted a pony, a camel, and what was the other thing she wanted? She wanted a carriage for the pony.
A carriage?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or a little.
You gotta have a.
And and it was. I'm like, a camel. Where did a camel come from?
Maybe the nativity scene. There's camels in the nativity scene, right?
Yes, you are correct. And I never thought of that, but yeah, you're correct. And she says, I like them, and I'm like, okay, but I said, are you going to be able to take care of a camel? I said, you're going to have to feed it, make sure its pen's clean. I tried giving all the options. She's like, yeah.
Yep, I'm going to do that.
And I'm like, well, do you think mom and dad would be okay with that? Yep. I said, then I got one last question. Where are you going to keep that camel? Well, in my room. I said, well, there's the problem. I said, the camel has to have a lot of room, I says, to move around. I said, and that, well, my aunt's got a farm. I'm like, of course she does.
Of course. You're like, I can't escape this one. It's just like there's no way of getting around it.
Yeah. I finally told her, I said, well, I just don't think the camel's going to fit in the sleigh and that. But I said, Santa will see what he can do for you because hey, maybe the parents were going to go get her a camel. I don't know in that. But yeah, I have to say that's probably the strangest one, I've been asked for, puppies and kittens and all that, live animals and that.
Yeah.
And we always have the conversation of, well, you're going to have to take care of it and, and clean up after it. And if it gets sick, you're going to have to take it to the doctor and all this. And of course, they're like, yep. Yeah, the parents are over there. Nope.
No. Do not encourage this behavior right now. It'd be funny do you post like a list of things not to ask for right next to you?
I need to.
Of course, not every child, depending on, if you get a 2-year-old coming up, they can't, they can't read very well, if not at all. So
and
they're
it's,
not,
you said 2 years old. So that's the other thing that when a child is 2 years old, I can just about tell you they are before parents even tell me their age, because at 2 years old, the child is scared to death of Santa Claus.
Most of the time.
He is. and that they're petrified. I mean, hey, I'm a stranger. I come once a year.
Yes.
You know, I mean,
yeah,
seriously.
they don't know you.
And that, so I get it. There's a lot of parents that don't get it. You know, they want the perfect picture. Everybody's smiling with Santa. It's not going to happen.
No, I can tell you from personal experience, the perfect picture that we got of my son with Santa Claus was when he was, I don't think he was quite a year old yet. And of course, he just didn't know. He looked up at Santa Claus like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
He just had it wasn't crying or screaming or anything like that. He just looked up like, who is this guy? It's the greatest picture ever that we have of him with Santa Claus. And awesome. Then like the year after that, I think is when the fear started to kick in because he's older and he's realizing things more. He's like, who's this guy?
Yeah,
like, I'm not getting near him.
Exactly. And you know, that's why, you know, I try and tell the parents, you know, if they're coming and we're taking pictures, they're going to get a picture. I tell them, you know, we've got time. I'm not going to rush the child. You don't need to rush your child. And that, I know you've been waiting in line and that, but if you want to get a good picture, then we're going to have to warm up to each other here, you know? And I'm going to say a good 75, 80% of the time it will work.
Yeah.
But there's that other 25, 20% of the time that no, it's not happening.
So what are the fundamentals of being Santa Claus?
Oh, well, first thing, you got to be jolly. You got to be happy. You know, you do. You have to be that jolly old elf because that's who you are.
Yeah.
And that, so I stress that a lot, you know.
Because I'm sure you've been Santa Claus for 39 years now. Yeah. You've had to have had so many people come up to you and be like, hey, I've been kind of thinking about playing Santa Claus. What can you tell me?
Yeah. And that, I mean, I feel, you know, you have to be the jolliest guy of all. You know, the suit that you get, you need to make it a very rich looking suit. And I'm not saying rich as in you have to go spend $1,000 for it, but like this, I mean, the crushed velvet, I think is what makes Santa Claus. There's other outfits out there, don't get me wrong, that are beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And that, so your outfit needs to look nice. If you're wearing a artificial beard, you know, buy the more upgraded one that looks more real. And that because it helps. And, you know, just talk to the children. You know, when the child's coming up, put yourself in their shoes as to, okay, how would I feel walking up to this person for the first time?
So do you
make it happy?
Do you try to transport yourself back to when you were young and going to Santa Claus?
Sometimes.
And, you know, think, okay, what did I do? What did I ask for? How did I react?
Yes.
What do I remember about, you know, Santa sounding like or looking like?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, is children have a lot of questions. A lot of questions.
And how do you answer those?
And you know what? I really can't say how do I answer it is because whatever they ask, I answer their question.
So you don't deflect it.
I don't say I don't know. I answer it in the best way I feel possible. And that's what you need to do, you know. I'm not going to say you're going to lie to the children because I feel I don't lie to them. I just add to the fantasy for them.
Okay.
You know?
So what's an example of?
So, well, like I said, I come in before Christmas. I'm visiting with the child. I want to see the reindeer. Well, the reindeer are at the North Pole resting up for the big trip on Christmas Eve. You know, they have to have all their energy on Christmas Eve. Plain, simple, and it's the truth.
Yeah.
Because, hey, if it's really going to happen, they got to have their rest.
Yep.
Well, then immediately following that question is, well, then how did you get here? So, and, I've learned to be ready for that question. And I usually tell them, well, I have a helicopter that brings me in to wherever I'm at, the closest airport, is the Kankakee airport.
Yeah.
And they drop Santa off. I said, and then Santa has special friends in every town that brings him to where he needs to be to visit. And I said, and the reason that we do it that way is because from the sky, when the sleigh's in the sky, the roads look a lot different than when you're driving them. So Santa depends on people that live here that know the roads to get him where he needs to go.
Yeah, because Santa doesn't use roads to get around.
No, and
so you have no idea where you're going.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, in reality, for the most part, that's true because, if somebody asked me to come to their house, I probably don't know where their house is.
Yeah.
So, but I have to use GPS to do that.
Is that what you tell them?
It depends on how old. Some of them, if they're 10, 11, 12 years old, where they're kind of on the edge of, okay, is this guy actually it or not?
Yeah.
The other question that you get is, are you the real Santa? And I answer it that, first of all, I am the real spirit of Santa Claus. But also, as you know, Santa has a lot of helpers. And the thing is, you'll never know which one of those is the real Santa.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. That's really, did you come up with that on your own or did you adopt that?
No, I actually I heard it somewhere before, but I don't remember where.
Okay.
But when I heard it, I was like, yeah, I came up with, I'm the real spirit of Santa Claus. I came up with that one. But then adding that little bit at the end, it really makes them think. Then they're kind of like,
Yeah.
That is genius.
I'm glad Andrew agrees.
I know. I've been just sitting with that for about 30 seconds. That's pretty genius.
Right? And it's making me like, oh man.
Yeah. So, you better be on your best behavior because you never know.
Especially if they're a little older and they've seen they've seen Santa how many times now? And then they're thinking like, oh man, like, have I met the real one yet?
Right.
Or like, which one was it that was the real one?
So while we're on that subject, I have one little boy that comes and sees me every year and he is just awesome. I absolutely love him to death. He is the miniature spirit of Christmas because he's Christmas year round. I'm friends with his mom and that on Facebook, and he writes letters to Santa year round. He is in his Christmas jammies year round. I mean, he loves Christmas, and he absolutely loves Santa Claus.
That's awesome.
And they have taken him around, and he has seen several different Santa Clauses and that. And but he comes at least 2-3 times to see me wherever I'm at, and he is actually going to the Macy's Day Parade this year.
Oh, wow.
And I just seen him last weekend and he told me that. And I'm like, that is so awesome. And he knows that, there's different Santas because, they've taken him all over the country to see different Santa Claus. And I think that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's like a Santa tour.
Yeah, exactly. And, but he tells his mom that I'm the real one. And it makes me feel good, it does. And and I said, but I asked her, I said, why does he say that? I don't understand. And she says, because you know his name every time he walks up. And I'm like, yep, you're right.
Yeah.
And that's tough. And that's one of the toughest things. That's why I always like to have either a Mrs. Claus with me or have a elf with me, because then they can kind of ask the child's name I mean, Santa's supposed to know their name.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I get it.
And that's what I was wondering if you do kind of like some, what do they call that? Recon, Or...
yeah. So, like I said, that deal, if I go to a house, I just kind of listen as I'm walking in because usually the children are up running around. Oh my gosh, Santa's here. And I hear the parents, hey, Jimmy, or hey, Sally or whatever. And I kind of catch on to the who's who.
You're like, okay, I got to remember that.
Yeah, that's the worst part.
You're right. Yeah. Especially
Santa's
if there's a lot of kids. Santa's always been old too. And he's never, he's not getting any younger.
No, Santa's, I think this year is 1,746 years old, I think is what they say.
And you have to keep up on that.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that's one of the many questions you get asked. How old are you, Santa Claus?
Yep. Now, there was a couple times because I just left my mind, but I do what everybody else does. I Google it.
Yeah.
And I see what Google tells everybody. Yep. And that way, if they do ask, I can tell them because children are awful smart and they know how to use the computers and all that at a young age. And if I'm off, they're going to tell me.
When's Santa's birthday? Is it Christmas? I'm sorry, but you was talking about this, and I'm
put me on the spot.
I'm like, when does Santa have a birthday?
I've always he does.
He has to have a birthday.
Honest to gosh, right now I do not remember off the top of my head.
And is Santa's birthday like St. Nicholas's birthday?
Yes, and I've been asked that once before.
Yeah,
and that's why I researched it. I used to know it, and I don't know it right off the top of my head. You put me on the spot. And
Santa's birthday is March 15th.
That's
March 15th.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
March
That's
15th.
funny. That's my son's mother's birthday is March 15th.
And according to SantaClaus.com.
Yeah.
So
that sounds official
we got
to me.
it right from the source.
And that's
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to say it's in March but then I'm like, wait a minute, or is it in May? And I'm like, no, because my son's birthday is March 14th, and that's how I usually remember it is March 15th and that. So, hey, thanks.
Thank you, Andrew, our fact checker.
That's what I'm here for.
But, they can come up with any question out of the world and you, as long as you give them an answer, most of the time the children are okay with it.
Yes. But if you don't, then...
Yeah, then they're just kind of...
I don't know about this guy. Yeah. So, as... maybe before we continue on, are there any other like really important fundamentals that you go by? Or you kind of mentioned the name thing and how you try to get around that.
Get their names, that works very well. Try and make your entrance because that's one of the things that a lot of people like about me. I'm loud. I mean, when I'm trying to be quiet, I'm loud. I'm a loud person.
But you can't go in quietly. Is that what you're saying?
If you go in and it's like, ho, ho, ho. No, I mean, the kids are like, you're supposed to be jolly. You got to, ho, 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 here's Santa Claus. Merry Christmas. That's what gets, their attention.
Yeah.
There is one person that I talked with several times that he does Santa Claus, and I'm like, man, you've got to make the entrance. I said that's the key to everything because you surprise them, and then they're like, oh, and then you can go from there.
I feel like there should be like a Santa alliance or like union that everyone has to belong to, and they have to meet so many times a year and discuss like is there really?
Yes, there is. There's a Santa, I'm going to say it's a Santa forum.
Okay.
That you can go online, and I was on it for a while, but I can't remember what the site was. But anyways, it was Santa Clauses all over the world. And that's where I got a lot of answers, because it's kind of an open forum. People are just chatting on there, and you can join in on the chat, whatever you want to do.
Was it clausnet.com?
Yep, that's it.
That's it.
You're the man. You're on it.
Andrew's on top of it today, man.
Yeah. And you can get some really, really good answers off of there. I talked to Santa Claus one time. He was in Germany, and it was fantastic talking with him and chatting with him online. I also go down to Santa Claus, Indiana. I mean, that's where Santa Claus is.
Is that actually the name of the town?
Yes, Santa Claus, Indiana.
Oh my gosh!
And
where is that in Indiana?
It is in right on the southern tip of Indiana. Okay. And that it's right before I think you cross over into Louisville.
Okay.
That's where Holiday World is.
Yes, exactly.
Amusement park.
Have you been there?
I haven't.
Yeah.
My wife has been.
Oh, yeah.
And I've heard it's incredible.
It is the best.
I've never heard of it until
really.
Now.
And if you have a child,
I do. Yeah.
Well, then you need to go to Holiday World.
Okay.
And that it is one of the cleanest parks I've ever been in my life. And free parking. I mean, they are family oriented. It's, nothing against any of the other amusement parks, but they really are. I mean, they make it so that you can afford to bring your children.
Oh, that's the problem with amusement parks, right?
But I mean, you get in there, I mean, free soda pop, free suntan lotion all day. You just walk up to a kiosk and get your drink. It's great. It's a wonderful place. And of course, Santa Claus is there.
Yeah, I would hope so.
We went there when my children were younger, and they were sitting down to have story time with Santa, and I'm like, I'm on it. I'm there. And I went and sat there with my children, listened to them, and then I went up and talked to the gentleman, to Santa Claus, and he was great. In fact, he's the one that turned me on to SantaClaus.net.
Okay. He's like, hey, you got to check this out, man.
And then there's a place down there, the Candy Castle, which is off of the campus, but it's part of the same person that made Holiday World.
Okay.
And they have pictures up there, and there's actually a group you can join. And I mean, they have uniforms, they march in parades, they carry candy canes instead of, guns.
A gun, yeah.
Yeah, they carry candy canes. They have an honor guard. And I mean, they wear red berets.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's one of my dreams.
That's awesome.
One of these days, I'm gonna.
Yeah, you're gonna join.
I hope so.
Yeah,
and that I really do.
Is that hard to get into, or is it just a time thing?
I think it's just a time thing. I mean, I know you have to go through certain things to get in there. It's not hey, here I am. No.
We got to check out this guy and see how legit he is.
But like I said, that's another one of my dreams. But getting off track here.
Well, there's so many things that Santa Claus is entangled in, right?
It is
intertwined with. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that thinking back on the 39 years, I'm sure you love every event or every house you visit. It's always something that you enjoy and love. But I'm sure there's some events that stick out more than others that you've been invited to or that you're a part of every year. Do you have favorites or some of those standalone moments where you're just like, wow, I am Santa Claus,
There's two of them that I've been going to for a few years now that really I enjoy. The first one is because this was the very first parade I'd ever been in, and that was Herscher. And it is just a down-home feeling parade, okay? There's not a whole lot of floats or anything like that. Santa comes in on the fire truck. Fire truck's lit up with lights, horns, sirens going. It used to be they had fireworks as I was coming down the road.
Oh, wow.
And it was great. And the people and the children just lined both sides of the street, Main Street. And they would turn the lights off downtown. And so it was just me lit up on a fire truck. That was one of my mother's favorites. My mom just thought it looked so neat when I was coming down and that light, it was just the light on me. She said it just looked so cool. And it's one more fun ones. I go put it that way, you
right.
know.
You find it more to be one of the fun ones.
It is because, like I said, it's just like a small down-home feeling. The children are just so excited alongside. Now, I can't hardly see them because they've got bright spotlights on me.
You, yeah.
But I try and look down and, see so I can at least see them.
Yeah.
And, I turn both ways, hit both sides. It's, they're just excited. I do have a Mrs. Claus.
Is that your wife?
No, it is
it's not your wife. Okay.
No. And that, my wife, we just talked about it. I asked her if she ever wanted to, and she said, maybe. But my wife is way more reserved than I am. Okay. And that, God love her, because, I'm out there. I've never met a stranger. I'll talk to anybody, whether I'm in the Santa suit or not. It's me.
Yeah.
But no, my Mrs. Claus is actually my cousin, Sherry, and this will be her, 7th, 8th year of doing it, maybe.
Okay.
And that, I've had, sounds kind of bad, but I had 2 more Mrs. Clauses before her.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Uh-oh. I guess Santa Claus isn't even exempt from, multiple.
Yeah, my first Mrs. Claus, I'll tell you this story really quick. It's not really quick, but I go to Herscher grade schools every year.
Okay.
And I'd been going to them about as long as I've been doing the parade out there, which is 20 years or so. And anyways, I was probably 5 years, 6 years into them. And I go there and I get dressed there. And I was still wearing the artificial beard and that. So I went, got ready, and I come out of the little room, and one of the office ladies says, "Hey, Santa, we got a surprise for you." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, what's that?" And they go, "Look around the corner." And so I walk around the corner, and there stood Mrs. Claus. And I looked. She says, "Well, old man, where you been?" I says, "Well, I've been getting ready." I said, "Where have you been all these years?" She says, "I'm the one that watches the elves, remember?" And her name was Janet Lochner, and she was phenomenal. I mean, her and I just clicked together.
Yeah.
We went through the school, and the ladies went through with us, and we handed out candy canes each classroom. The teachers in the first year, they were like, "So how long have you guys been doing this?" And Mrs. Claus says, "About an hour." And they're like, "What?" They said, "Yeah, we've never met each other."
Yeah.
I said, "In fact, I still couldn't tell you her first name." At that point, it was, we just met.
I don't know who she is. She's
Imposter.
Mrs. Claus.
Yeah. I don't know. And she was awesome. Janet was fantastic. Unfortunately, she passed away that about broke my heart real bad. On that, she was phenomenal. And I mean, all the way up until her last breath, man, she was Mrs. Claus.
Yeah.
And she lived in Herscher, but she was awesome. Second one was a lady by the name of Carol Berg, who I grew up in the neighborhood that, she was mom to my friends.
Okay.
And
in Bourbonnais. We didn't mention that earlier, but you are from Bourbonnais originally.
I am from Bourbonnais, yes. Yeah. So I asked her, because she always, was fun in that. And so I asked her, and she's like, "Are you sure?" She says, I'm older than you." I said, "Well, yeah, I know." I said, "That's all right." I says, "Really, you're not." I says, "If you look in the books, Mrs. Claus is younger than me, but
you're right.
And I don't know exactly by how much, but she is."
Yeah.
It's about 500 years.
Yeah. There you go.
Is that all?
Yeah.
I've been doing my research back.
Wow, Santa. Man, really robbing the cradle there.
Yeah, well, got to do what you got to do. That's what the elves are there for.
Oh, man.
But anyways, I said, "No, I think you would be a very good fit with me." And so she did it for several years with me. I think she did 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. And then she retired. She says, "I'm going to retire from it, Santa." I said, "Okay." But she was a more reserved Mrs. Claus, like a lot of Mrs. Claus.
The depictions.
Yeah.
Yep.
But she was awesome. I mean, she really was. The children loved her, and she's great. And that she moved to Alabama though.
Oh, come on! She wanted some of that sunshine and warm weather.
Warm weather. Yeah. She said, "I'm tired of the snow, Santa." I said, "I understand."
Man. It's tough being Santa and trying to have a Mrs. Claus.
It is. But Sherry's stuck with me for a few years now. Like I said, 8 years, I'm thinking.
Okay.
I lose track of time. I really do.
At this point, being 39 seasons and years in,
I just, it's all a blur. I mean, there's times I think like it's just been yesterday that I started doing it. And then I really get thinking, 39 years.
Wow.
I keep saying 40 years, I'm going to retire. And my wife says, no, you're not. She says, you will never retire. And she's right. I won't.
Yeah.
I might slow down, might start not doing as much, but.
Do you say that just because you've had your fill, or is it just, it's just in trying to enjoy other things in life?
I actually have a granddaughter now.
Oh, okay.
And they live out in New York. So I want to be able to see her more. I mean, everybody says, well, how wonderful is it for her that as she grows up, hey, my grandpa's Santa Claus. I said, well, yeah, that's great. I said in that. And, my son was going to try following in my footsteps and doing it out there, but he's not having as good luck, but he's, new to the area out there.
Okay.
So I said, well, you just have to keep doing small little things and eventually you'll get your name out there. I said, as long as you're good. And so
he's got the best teacher.
Yeah, he does very good. When he was in the Army, they were having a Christmas thing for children when he was down in Texas. And they needed a Santa Claus. And Jeremiah says, well, maybe I can get my dad to send me one of his suits. And he says, somebody can dress up. So he asked me and I said, yep. So I sent him the suit. This is the real belly of me now. I used to have a artificial belly but I don't need that anymore. He would have. So I sent all the stuff down there, boots, wig, everything. And the gentleman that was going to do it put the suit on. Well, Jeremiah said he was way too short. So Jeremiah put it on and he went and he got great reviews down there. The children loved him. His sergeant saw this, whatever, the higher ups that were there said he did a great job. So I think he can still do it.
Yeah.
He's just got to get out there and get his name out there. But he's a busy man. He's going to college, trying to get that, raise a family, work in that. So I told him, I said, I get it,
How cool is that, though?
It's awesome.
I mean, even though he hasn't done it on a regular basis, it's still cool that he's done it a little bit and he has that vision of taking it over.
It makes me very proud. It really does. I mean, I'm very proud of both my children. My daughter, teaches here in Moments, so she lives in the area, and she's been one of my elves since she found out that Dad was Santa Claus. She's been one of my elves.
That's so
and
cool.
She loves it, and she does very well at it. She does. She's a very good elf. She's like me. She's more,
outspoken.
Outspoken, outgoing. Just happy. And that, so she does good with me.
Yeah.
And that, so, and I'm glad they both like it. They used to go on Christmas Eve, I visit several houses on Christmas Eve.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Is that by request?
Oh, yeah.
And do they pay you? Or is it just kind of like?
So so I guess in a way I'm a Santa for hire, but yet I'm not, because
it probably depends, right?
It's not about the money to me. It really isn't. People ask me, hey, what do you want? I'll tell them, throw me $50 or whatever. A lot of times it's just so I can keep suits.
That's got to be costly,
and
because it looks very, very good.
Yeah. And I mean, I go every 3 years, I have to get a new suit. Yeah. And now I'm getting to where I keep 2 suits. because I'm doing so much. I need to have one at the cleaners, and I'm still doing, so I need the other suit to fall back on.
Gotta have a backup, man.
Yeah, and but there again, there's organizations I go to. I'm not going to charge you. I'm glad to be here. I'm happy you invited me here. And they're like, well, you're not doing it for free. I'm like, well, then whatever you want. Yeah. You know, I'm not. I don't set a price. Mm-hmm. I said, if I make it start feeling like a job, I'm not going to enjoy it.
You're not going to have fun.
You know, and I'm in it to have fun. You know, make people happy. Like I said, if I can get enough to,
pay for your
stuff up.
Yeah. And what's, how much do you drop on those suits?
This suit was $540.
Wow.
And I've ranged anywhere from this $600 to, I bought some that were like $300, $350, and they're very nice. Of course, I bought them offline, and now the place that I bought them from is gone. It's not online anymore, so that's why I keep changing where I get them from. I love this one the best, and that, for one, it has pockets in it.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it is. It's real nice because, you go places and that, and it's got what they call the parade sleeve on it. So it keeps, when I wave, the sleeve stays up.
Okay.
There's some of them that don't have that. Yeah, it is.
That's very important.
And that, because otherwise you wave, and not that it's bad looking, but then Santa's arm shows, and it's like, you want to see his white gloves, and you want to see the suit.
Yeah.
But that's all part of it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and people, I've had people get kind of angry with me because I won't tell them how much, but I'm like, folks, you don't understand. I don't care.
Yeah.
You throw me some money, I'm good. I mean, there's some places I go, fire stations. I go to like a little Christmas party for them. And I started a couple years ago where whatever they were going to pay me, they take that and donate to Make-A-Wish. Make-A-Wish Foundation to me is a great organization. I've done some Make-A-Wish Santa appearances for children in that. Very tough, very hard. But you just got to keep in your mind you're there for them.
Yes.
This is why Santa's here. It's a rough thing. It is. To see them little ones going through that, what they're going through. And, you just wish you could do something for them.
Yeah. And I mean, that has to have been, that's a double-edged sword. It's fulfilling, but also at the same time, there's the flip of the coin where you're like, I'm probably not going to, there's a chance I might not see this child next year. Most likely I won't.
Right.
So.
Little boy went and picked him up in a fire truck. Austin was his name, out in Limestone. They called and asked me if I could.
Austin Barnett?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And I went and picked him up on the fire truck, and we went back, and they had a big party for him. And it was the community turnout for that little guy was just great, we sat, and him and I talked and that, and, and I asked him what he wanted for Christmas. And he said, make my cancer go away, Santa. Mm-hmm. And, that was tough. And you can't answer that one. I'll see what I can do. Yeah, because they know better. They do. Yeah. They know.
Especially, his battle was very lengthy.
Yes. And he was a trooper. Boy, he was a trooper.
Yeah.
And that, but, I told him, I says, all I can do, Austin, I says, is I don't know if Santa can make that happen. I said, but I can pray for you. I said, and I can pray with you. I said, if you want to say a prayer right now, we will. And we did. And he was okay with that. He says, thank you. And that, poor little guy, tore me up.
Yeah.
There's been more incidences like that than people realize. I played Santa Claus at the mall for 3 years.
Okay.
Being a mall Santa Claus is very, very tough.
Oh gosh, I can only imagine. And in so many different ways,
yeah, I mean, you see all aspects of life as Santa Claus in a mall. You will see some children that will come and visit with you that, mom and dad are just struggling to be there and that. And then you have children that come that, I don't know how else to say, but they get everything handed to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that it's like they're going to have a jolly Christmas. I know. This little one here, I wish I could make their Christmas jolly. They sit on your lap and what would you like for Christmas? My daddy to have a job.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Really?
And what do you say to that? Is it this, I'll see what I can do?
I'll tell him, I said, Santa will see what he can do. And there's been a couple times I've been asked that. And I've had the elves that were working with me ask the parents, hey, ask mom, what can dad do? Because I know a lot of people. I'll reach out and see what I can find for you.
Have you ever...
Never ever accomplished it.
Okay. I was just curious if you ever came across one of those situations and you're like, oh, I'm going to investigate this. And then.
And I mean, I've reached out and had them, threw their name to a few people in that. But I've never checked to see what ever came of it. I don't know if they did or didn't, I just kind of, hey, give this person a call, see what you can do for them.
Yeah.
Had a little girl. Quite a few years back, a little boy was killed here in Kankakee. And this little girl comes, she sits on my lap. And she's just sad looking. I says, what would you like for Christmas? She says, Santa, I want my friend to come back. Well, okay. So I'm wondering, did your friend move away? What? So I have to ask. I'm like, so what's going on with your friend? I says, where's your friend at? Well, he died. So she says, that's all I want for Christmas, Santa. And she looks up and she's got big old crocodile tears running down her face. And I'm like, okay. And there again, it was Santa can only do certain things. I said, and unfortunately, Santa can't bring people back to life. I said, but I will tell you, I said, I'm sure your friend's watching over you. I says, and you can pray to him. And I said, and I'll bet you somehow, some way, you'll get an answer from him. I said, it may not be that day or the next day. I says, it may be 2-3 weeks. And I says, all of a sudden something will pop up and you'll think of him. I said, and that's him talking back to you.
Yeah.
And she's like, but he won't be here. I said, no, he won't. So, I mean, like I said, Santa, people think it's jolly holly, and it is.
Oh, it is.
But it can be tough. And the Santa Claus in the mall is, God bless them guys that do it because it's tough.
Well, and long hours, I imagine, too.
And that's the other thing. Right now, anymore, there's more and more and more real beard Santa Clauses.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way to go if you can pull it off, man.
For sure, for sure.
Whether you, because I feel like I've noticed some probably that are younger, they'll end up dyeing their beard. Yep. Is yours dyed or is it authentic?
I put a little whitening on mine, but when I wash it, oh no, it's gray. I mean, I could almost go without it, but there's just a little bit of darkness to it that Santa's got a white beard. So I whiten it up, but no, when I wash it, it's just gray.
Yeah. Do you keep it all year round?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yep. The first year I did the real beard, there again, I was scared to death because you can really see me now. You really know what I look like now. The fake beard, it was a costume kind of thing to me. You really couldn't see who I was. I mean, a lot of people knew who I was, but you couldn't see who I was. So I had that little bit of, I guess, security part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So when my beard started turning gray, my children and my wife said, you could just do Santa without a fake beard. And I'm like, yeah, I know what you're saying. I get it. And that. So I'm like, you know what? Let's see what happens. Let's start growing it out. because I had a beard. I mean, I always had a beard, but I kept it close trimmed.
Mm-hmm.
So I started letting it grow out, and it started looking really cool. And I'm like, okay. So the first year I said, okay, it's real beard Santa Claus. It is.
Yeah.
And I still wasn't, worried about it. I'm like, yep, okay, do my normal thing. And I'm trying to think. I went to, it was pictures I was doing with the photographer. I'm like, oh man, this first year, I got to look like Santa here. So I did it all up and I whitened it, and I stood in the mirror and I made sure, and I brushed and I combed, and I wanted to make sure it was perfect. And I was getting ready there, and I put the suit on and everything, and it was like, all right, Santa, it's time, picture time. And I mean, I got as white as this snowflake.
Nervous, huh?
Yeah, I did.
Just because you thought people would recognize you?
Well, not necessarily recognize me as, I don't know. It was just, oh my gosh, this child is really seeing who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I look the part enough, to be Santa Claus. Because the last thing I want to do is ruin it for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I want people, children, whatever, to have the Santa Claus thing forever, you know? And so I walked out there and they were like, oh. And I'm like, well, so far so good. And I sat down and took the pictures, and then they take the pictures right away and they go up front so the people can pick out what they want and that. And Miss Bree's up front, and she's like, oh, Santa, you need to see these. She says, this looks great. And I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, come on. So I walked up there. The children went with their dad out in the mall. And I walked up there, and she started going through the pictures, and I'm like, okay, I'm better now.
That kind of sealed the deal for you. Yeah.
And of course, I've got the real beard, and I know a lot of people in town. I know a lot of their children, their grandchildren, which brings up the Santa looks like Sully. Or Sully, I nicknamed Sully.
Well,
or
that's just...
Sully looks like Santa,
Yeah.
And so here recently, I made a new friend from one of the haunted houses I was working. And her daughter, she's part of part of Project Headspace and Timing. And anyways, her daughter is 4 years old. She seen me last year at their Christmas get together, and she sat on my lap and everything. And I remember her in that, Well, the picture's on Kristen's phone. So she was going through it, and here the other day, Kristen sends me a Snapchat. There's Sophia looking at the phone, and she says, Mom, Santa looks a lot like Sully. And she turns it, and I'm like, oh, boy, another one. I said, and Kristen's laughing. She says, I figured they'd figure it out because when we were working the haunted woods and haunted houses together and that, the kids were right there with us.
Right.
And that. And I'm like,
well, Sully just happens to look a lot like Santa. I mean, what else can what else can you say?
So
right?
they, I end up I said, there again, we go back to Santa's got a lot of helpers.
Yes.
And that, Santa picked me as being one of the helpers.
Okay.
And that we have to keep it a secret. We can't, just like in the Tim Allen movie, we got to keep it a secret.
Yes.
You can't tell anybody. And I mean, she wasn't the first one. I've had friends, the one granddaughter noticed me out at Hersher School. And I didn't know she was there. And I went in the classroom and I sat down, and here she comes and she sits down right in front of me and looks up at me, and I'm like, uh-oh.
You're like,
yeah. And I'm just like, and she's just sitting there, and I could tell like the wheels were turning like,
like Steve?
Yeah.
Sully?
And I'm like, oh no. And so I'm trying to disguise my voice. I can't disguise my voice.
You can't fool them. Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, well, they wanted me to give presents to each one of them. I'm like, okay. So I had a big bag of presents. I'm like, there's like 25 children in there. I'm like, not a problem. I reach in, grab. First one I pull out is Bristol. That's her. I'm like, I said, Bristol, come on up here. And she came up. She sat on my lap, called me Santa, just, went right along with it and everything. And then her grandma picked her up from school that day.
Of course.
And the next thing I know, my phone's ringing. Santa, Bristol, or Steve, Bristol wants to talk to you. And she puts her on the phone, and I'm like, oh. She was the first one to ever call me out on it.
Yeah.
And so I told her the story that, well, how did you get picked? I'm like, oh, well, there's another good question.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, I said, I was just in the mall one day, I says, and it was really Santa there. I said, and I walked by and I said, he called me over and we talked and he asked me if I'd like to be his helper. I said, and here I am today. Okay. I said, got to keep it a secret. Okay. and she did. I mean, her grandma called me one day. Her grandma and grandpa were talking about me. And they said something about Santa. And I guess she went over there and just chewed him out, told him, hey, this is a secret. You're not supposed to talk about it. And I'm like, hey, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. That's so adorable.
It is. And I mean, she's older now. She knows and that, but she still has fun with it, you know. There's, like I said, I've went to several houses that, I've been going there 30 years and, the children are now 30-some years old.
Yeah, yes.
And I'm going for their children. And it's like, man, Santa's getting old.
Santa's getting old. Did you think it would turn into 39 years when you started?
No, I did not. Not at all.
You were just going to do it once to appease your parents?
Yeah.
But when, after how many times did it sink in like, okay.
After probably, I'm going to say, probably the third, fourth year, because more and more people started calling me. And I'm like, wow, this is starting to be a real thing. I mean, I had to get a schedule book so I knew what days, in the beginning it was like 2 or 3. Okay, yeah, I can remember what days I'm going to be there. And then it got 5, 10, 20, hundreds, and it's like, oh my gosh. And, I started relaxing a little more, getting more into it. I actually read a couple books, of Santa Clauses and that, just to try and get the feel for things and that, which had helped a lot. I'm going to say probably 3, 4 years into it. I was like, I'll keep doing it for a few more years. Still never guessed it was going to be 39 years. I'm honest in that. But every time I talked about, maybe this is going to be my last year, my wife would be like, no, it's not. She says, you enjoy it too much. She says, people enjoy you too much. She says, you're not going to stop doing it. No. And I'm like, well, we'll see. And then I'm like, okay, I'll go to 25 years. I hit 25. I'm like, all right, 30 years, that's a good round number and we'll cut it off. No, here I am, 39 years. I said 40 years. I said, next year will be my last year. And my wife's still like, she says, no. She says, you're never going to give it up until you have to give it up.
I can speak on, or speak for the entire community when I say thank you, for doing it for so long and just bringing Santa Claus to a whole new level and keeping the tradition alive and keeping the belief in Santa Claus alive.
Yeah.
And, there is something that you pass out to people. You call these a challenge coin. Is that what?
I call it a challenge coin, but it's a Santa coin, I guess you'd call it. The military, they have challenge coins. Listen to that. Challenge coins in the military that they get for, whatever. And that, and it's a big deal. And so I call it my Santa challenge coin that, I hand it out to different people. It's just a little thing that, keeps the spirit of Christmas with you year round. I tell the children that I hand them to and that, or the adults, put it up someplace that you can see it every day. Put it up on your dresser. I said, and, look at it. I says, you don't have to just celebrate Christmas at Christmas. I said, celebrate Christmas year round.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yes.
I says, and I says, and you'll always have Christmas, I says, in your heart. And I believe that. You have to have Christmas, the spirit of Christmas. You have to have it in your heart.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to have, your Christmas tree up and the lights and
right.
all that stuff, but just the spirit, the meaning, the feeling of Christmas about your everyday life in your heart.
And that, it's my favorite. It's always been my favorite time of year. And there again, my wife and I were just talking about this as we were going through the store, looking at all the new, Christmas decorations and all that. I says, I said, this is my favorite time of year because believe it or not, people are more happier this time of year. I see it,
Yeah.
When you're in the stores, sometimes the stores are a little more crowded. And for the most part, people are happy. The Christmas music is playing. I know sometimes people get tired of that, but I still like it. But, their spirits are higher. Their enthusiasm's better. And it just, I love it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what Santa Claus is. It don't necessarily mean it's the guy in the red suit. It means that you're able to have fun during Christmas or not and spread the fun, the love, whatever, to everybody else.
Yes.
And so that's kind of what my motto is,
Yeah. And which, what's on the challenge coin is believing in Santa is believing in the magic of Christmas.
Yes.
And that's just so well said.
Yeah. It's that's what it is.
Yeah.
Christmas is a magical time, don't necessarily mean I'm going to pull a rabbit out of my hat or something, but it's a different
it's more
kind of
than
magical.
that. It's more than that.
It is. I love it. And like I said, I say I'm going to give it up, but I won't. I never will.
Well, you do such a great job.
Well, I appreciate it. And that I really do. I appreciate everybody around. The one other thing I was going to tell you is I'm very proud of this belt.
The bells.
It's a unique belt. My mother passed away here 2 years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And she bought me this belt.
Okay.
And that she says, you need to have a good belt. And because, there in the beginning, I was just using the belts that came with the suit.
Sure.
Not that they weren't good, but they could look a little fakey.
Yes, they can.
And she says, you need a real leather belt. So I got online and I found this belt back in, I think I got this belt in 1990. And this guy's name was Santa Richard. Santa Richard does Santa belts. And you send him your size and he built the belt to you. And I've had it ever since.
Wow. It's in good shape.
It is. I see the wear and tear on it.
Right. But and the fact that it looks the way it does and it's that old, that's genuine leather there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's another thing that kind of sets me off is that this big belt.
Yeah.
I'm the only one around here with it. Like I say, it's fun. It's a blast. Mm-hmm. I encourage anybody who wants to try it, just make sure you're jolly.
Well, thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I had fun.
Yes.
This was really, really fun for me.
Yeah, I had a blast too.
And that, something out of my ordinary. So like I told you before, I was a little nervous going into it, but hey, I think it worked out pretty good.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank
you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So on behalf of the entire Kankakee podcast team and, of course, the Pathfinder team as well, we want to wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year as well. And thank you to all of our sponsors and patron subscribers as well. Maybe one last ho, ho, ho.
All right,
maybe.
You ready?
Yeah.
Oh, ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas, everybody! Oh, ho, 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 ho!
Awesome. Man, I don't know what to say after that.